Hey everyone, my name is Quinn. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that I think is quite interesting. I hope you do too. That being the currently unknown subclasses of the Critical Role Campaign 3 characters Ashton, Greymoor, and Fresh Cut Grass. They are a barbarian and a cleric, respectively, and despite the fact that we are 17 sessions into the third campaign, we know little about their subclasses save for the names and some of their early abilities. In this video, we're going to go over what information we know, what those early abilities are, and then we're going to get into kind of speculation on what their overall builds might be and how the subclasses might take shape in the future, in addition to how they might be published eventually. If you enjoy this, be sure to give it a like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I'd love to make more content like this if you all enjoy it. Let's jump into it. So, starting out alphabetically, we have Ashton Greymoor, the Earth Ganassi barbarian of the party. They've already established themselves as one of the group's heaviest hitters thus far, and we do know their subclass name thanks to a mention from Matt in the first episode. Their class is the barbarian primal path of fundamental chaos, so we know it also seems to be fairly tied in with dunamancy, which is another school of magic of Matt Mercer's own invention. It's really fun and really interesting. We got some subclasses based on it in Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, which came out in 2020, but those are just for the wizard and for the fighter. This school of magic, for those who don't know, has to do with kind of the elements of reality itself, time, space, gravity, that sort of thing. And the subclasses are really cool, and I think that the subclass that Ashton has kind of folds all these things together in an interesting way and kind of gets at the core of dunamancy rather than specializing into particular areas of it as the subclasses from Wildmount do. And it does this through some random elements that we're going to get into here now. Getting into the class's specific abilities, the first that we know of is called Chaos Burst. Assumedly this happens at 3rd level, which is when the Barbarian gains their subclass. And it's almost Divine Smite-like in its flavor, which as somebody who really likes Paladins, I love. It allows the Barbarian to, after they've made a melee weapon attack, choose to add 2d8 damage of a randomly determined type to that damage roll. The damage seems to be determined by rolling a dice of some kind to determine the damage type. And this dice seems to either be a d6, d8, or d10, as we've only seen 5 options so far. Those options being lightning, force, cold, fire, and psychic. I also think that this is likely to be something that is determined based on the proficiency bonus, particularly that I think that the Barbarian might have access to a number of these equal to their proficiency bonus per long rest. It would make sense as to why we've seen Ashton use 2 thus far at 3rd and 4th level, as that was their proficiency bonus at the time. And now that they're 5th level, we've not seen them in a circumstance where they would have used 3. So I think that it's quite possible there. And I think that'd be an interesting kind of way to balance it. And it would really fall in line with how things have been balanced in the aftermath of how, all of the subclasses in Tasha's, which have been pretty interesting in a lot of regards. The other abilities remained unnamed, but it's quite an interesting effect. Whenever Ashton begins raging, they roll a d4, and that determines a sort of aura effect of their rage that allows them to tap into a specific element of dunamancy and debuff enemies around them based on that. Particularly, we have details on 2 of those more specifically thus far. We know one is Orbital Decay, which is focused on gravity. This creates a kind of 15-foot bubble around the Barbarian where enemies are drawn towards them. Any enemy in that 15-foot radius has disadvantage on attacks other than the Raging Barbarian, which is quite nice, as Barbarians tend to have the most health and just be able to reduce damage thanks to the rage, which is great. I think that it really allows a very tanky playstyle that we don't see a ton of in 5th edition. The other one is Temporal Morass, which is sort of a time-based slowing effect, which, as somebody who really likes a slow spell, I enjoy a lot. It causes enemies within the range, which we don't know currently. I would guess either 15 feet to remain consistent with the other options, or maybe 30 feet to make a Constitution saving throw against some DC of some kind. I would assume it's Constitution modifier, based on other Barbarian subclasses. And they kind of, if they fail, they have to have no reactions, and they, I believe, have their movement speed halved, which is quite interesting. I think it's great to be able to kind of shut enemies down and really limit their options there. We know that the other 2 ideas are based on space and possibility, but currently their functions are unknown, as they haven't been rolled in combat and really had their function displayed. I think that all these abilities are quite interesting, and I really like the random elements, as that's something I just love in subclasses. Also, for reference, for this and for FCG's portion, the information I'm getting is coming primarily from Critical Role Wiki and my own observations from watching the stream. You can find any information there as well, which is a very nice source to have. Moving on to the subclass of fresh cut grass, we know that it's called empathy domain. This was revealed pretty early on, and I initially believed that it was a modification to the peace domain, but upon closer inspection and after, 17 episodes to see it, it seems much more distinct than that. We know that they get at least one ability at first level, and we know one of their channel divinities, particularly their second level option, in addition to a few of their domain spells, all of which we'll get into now. The first level ability is called Transfer Suffering, and it allows FCG to take damage for an ally. Whenever they see an ally take damage within a certain range, we don't know the exact range yet, I would guess either 30 or 60 feet, more likely the latter. FCG is able to half that damage. The initial target still takes half of the damage. FCG gains the other half as temporary hit points, which they can later add to a weapon attack. I believe just a melee weapon attack before the end of their next turn. If they don't get a chance to add that damage to a melee weapon attack, it instead damages them. We don't know exactly how many uses they have of this. They have more than one per rest, but it's difficult to judge currently, especially because it could, in my eyes, either be proficiency bonus number of times or it could be wisdom modifier number of times, both of which are +3 for fresh cut grass right now. So as they get higher level and as they increase their wisdom, we might be able to get a better idea of this. But yeah, it's a pretty solid baseline feature, and I think it's quite powerful, though probably not as powerful as like Twilight Domain or Peace Domain, so it's all good in my book. Their channel divinity is known as Sympathetic Binding, which will allow them to, as it sounds, create a bond between two characters. Those characters are then able to benefit from a bonus action that FCG gains called Ardent Armor, where he is able to give them temporary hit points equal to, I believe, 4 at the present. He also has access to domain spells, as all clerics do. The 3 that have been confirmed so far have been Speak with Animals, Detect Thoughts, and Aura of Vitality, none of which are on the cleric spell list traditionally, save for the last of them, Aura of Vitality, which is added in Tasha's, if you use the expanded spell list rules. I also think that Calm Emotions is probably a domain spell. I'd be willing to bet at least some money on that, because it's very in line with the idea of a cleric that is empathetic and almost like therapist-like, which is what FCG seems to be trying to do. And I think that would be very thematically appropriate for them to have access to that at all times in case it's needed. Moving on to speculations for later relevant abilities for both of these classes. I think that Ashton's class is going to gradually buff some of its abilities as it goes, perhaps increasing the radius of the aura that he gets, or perhaps increasing the number of chaos bursts that he gets, as I specified previously by proficiency bonus. I also think it's likely that, similarly to other random subclasses, such as the Wild Magic Barbarian, for another Barbarian example, or the recent College of Spirits Bard, it seems fairly likely that they'd get some ability to allow them to control the randomness of their kit to some degree. Particularly something like being able to roll twice when you start raging and choose which one of them you want to do, or if you roll the same thing twice, just picking. Because I know that's what Bard gets, I believe, with the College of Spirits Bard, which I've talked about way too much on this channel already. In terms of FCG, it's a little harder to speculate on, particularly because clerics have a ton of magical variety in their kits, and just the sheer number of subclasses means that there are a ton of different options and possibilities that have already been covered and already established precedents for things that clerics can do. So I don't know, if I had to guess, it's going to be focused primarily on what it has been, particularly protecting and buffing your allies, as several other cleric subclasses have been, but particularly this seems to have even more of a focus than those do. Luckily, we won't have to wait very long for confirmation on either of these, as both Barbarians and Clerics gain another subclass feature at level 6, which, as of recording this video, is the next level that the party will reach by the time they end up leveling up, which could be a while. Hopefully is a while. I like it when they level up slower, but that might just be a me thing. Finally, I wanted to talk about the meta kind of meaning of these subclasses, as I think it's quite interesting. Particularly, I was a bit confused as to why these aren't published yet. At the beginning of the campaign, there were a number of reasons I could think of, but some of those have been kind of ticked off as we've gone on. My initial thought is, maybe this will be some of the new subclasses that will be present in the tal'dorei Reborn campaign setting. That campaign setting came and went with subclasses for both Clerics and for Barbarians, but neither of these were present. However, the thing that made me think that this was particularly strange is the past precedent that Critical Role has set by releasing its stuff on D&D Beyond. Particularly with the early campaign 2, Bloodhunter was released on D&D Beyond for everybody to see and use in their own games via Mollymock using it and then being able to just give it to the masses there. And then later in the campaign, we saw Ford's subclass as soon as he took it, which was the Oath of the Open Sea, in addition to an updated version of the Cobalt Soul, which is what Bo was using. So overall, there is a past precedent for them publishing and releasing these subclasses to the public in a fairly timely manner. And it was a bit confusing to me as to why this hadn't happened yet. But I can think of two primary reasons as to why they might not have yet. The first of these is just simple secrecy. The fact that the campaign is still kind of in its fledgling stages, and I think that they might kind of want to allow these characters to grow and organically reveal these abilities as the campaign kind of comes into its own. I can also see an element of Matt wanting to balance them a little more by testing the gameplay but with both of these characters in Critical Role. However, that wasn't an issue with Blood Hunter, nor the Cobalt Soul, nor the Open Sea, so maybe not. My other thought is that perhaps this is an indication of things to come. Particularly, this leads me to believe that there could be some sort of like Critical Role character source book in the pipeline from Wizards or something. As I think that they've really started to collaborate a lot more. We just saw Netherdeep, which came out a few days ago, which I haven't picked up, but I've heard fantastic things about. We also had Wildmount back in 2020. I think that the idea of getting more player options, particularly with how well the community responded to all the Dunamancy spells and Dunamancy subclasses, is quite likely, and it could be quite cool to see an Exandrian sourcebook with a more player-facing focus. I think that is not unlikely at this point at all, and I think it would be great to see, and I would be quite in favor of it, even if it means waiting a little longer on seeing the actual full function of these subclasses. So that was the video. What do you think? Be sure to comment your thoughts on either of these subclasses below. Do you agree with me? Am I dumb and stupid? Any of the above. And be sure to like and subscribe, as mentioned. I really enjoy making these things, and I'd love to make more. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a good day. Bye.